So I hope you enjoyed that piece by J.S. Bach, the Allemanda from the Partita in D minor. Instead of going on to the second piece in that suite in D minor, I'm going to save that for next week's video. And instead, right now I'm going to play another Allemanda, but this one written about 200 years later. So I thought it would give you an example of the variety that composers found within the same format. Before I go on to the next piece, I wanted to just mention one other thing. This is the bow that I just used for J.S. Bach's piece. It was made in 1795, so Bach was already dead for 45 years, but it's much closer to the shape and the weight of bows in Bach's time. Compared to modern bows, as you'll see, it's a little bit shorter and a little bit lighter. Now I'm going to show you my modern bow here. This one was made in 1903, which is relatively modern in classical music time, but as you can see, it's a bit longer, it's heavier, and the hair is a bit wider. And what that allows for me as a violinist is that I can hold a note much louder, and since the weight is distributed evenly, I can maintain or sustain that note for a long time with the same volume. So, and that's much more characteristic of modern violin playing generally. So the sort of technology continued to change and grow as violinists tried new things. So yeah, as I say, this is a 1903 bow. The next piece I'm going to play was written in the 1920s by a Belgian violinist named Eugene Ysaÿe. Ysaÿe had his career mostly in the second half of the 19th century and into the 20th century, and he loved to play Bach. He performed Bach a lot throughout his career, and at the end of his life in the 1920s, he wrote 6 solo pieces for the violin, just like Bach wrote his 6 suites for the violin as well. This one that I'm going to perform is the 4th piece by Eugene Ysaÿe for solo violin, and the first movement, just like what you heard previously, is also an Allemanda. I wanted to just make one other note about the rhythm. I talked about the rhythm of the Allemanda in J.S. Bach's case is that short note followed by a long note. Well, in Ysaÿe's piece, he chooses to use 3 short notes and then a long. So the beginning of his piece goes, so you hear those da 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 da, 3 short notes, and then the long note. Later in the piece, he also uses sometimes just 1 short and then a long, like Bach, or 2 shorts and a long. I'll give you one other example here. So between the long notes, he used 2 short notes, da da, like this. So he expands upon that rhythmic structure a little bit and uses a little more variety. The other thing, as you might have just noticed from that example, Ysaÿe used a lot of what we call double stops, which is 2 notes at a time, or triple stops, which would be 3 notes at a time. So I was just playing there. The first note was actually a 3-note chord played all together, and then single notes, and another 3-note chord. So much more in this piece by Ysaÿe, you'll hear those multiple notes being played at the same time. Bach was well aware of this technique and did use it a lot in some of his pieces, but I just wanted to point it out that that's another thing that Ysaÿe changed in his version of the Allemanda. So I hope you enjoy Eugene Ysaÿe's Allemanda.